Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today. I used to give it a moment or so, give it a minute, just because it does take a little bit of time for the attendees to kind of sign in, people with Zoom updates and things, and just waiting to kind of activate that. So I can see the attendee numbers kind of creeping up, but if you don't mind, we'll give it kind of not a huge amount of time, sort of 15, 20 seconds, just waiting for people to be able to dial in today. But thank you for joining us. To everyone who is here so far on what's lovely, I don't know, lovely cloudy, but warmer, sunnier day than we've had. I know that can impact things, sitting on a webinar when you've got a nice sunny day at lunchtime, but we do appreciate you joining us today. Alrighty, so I think I'd say a few more numbers coming through, but I appreciate everybody's time. So let's crack on. So a quick introduction from me before I hand over to our guest speaker today, Erum. As I say, thank you for joining us. This is our June now, is it? So sixth Lunch and Learn webinar this year. We've been hosting them monthly on all sorts of different topics within internal and change communication. So thank you if you've joined a previous one, and welcome today if it's your first session with us. Today we will be focusing on change communications within IT technology change programs. So I'm delighted to be joined by Erum Quddus today, who has lots of experience of this across many different global corporate matrix businesses. So she'll be sharing her best tips on how to succeed, make them as much of a success as possible. So who are we and why do we host these sessions? So we are a corporate communications and marketing recruitment company. So that is our bread and butter. We cover all types of roles, from PR, media relations to internal change communications, of course, from a mid to senior level. But as well as recruitment, we do, we publish reports and we host events both in person and virtual. The main reason really is to share best practice and give people the opportunity to ask the expert, as it were, to kind of upskill different areas of communications. I would say, just from a brief market update, it has been a challenging sort of 12, 15, maybe up to 18 months now. It has been quite quiet across permanent and contracts. But we are positive. We are staying positive, and there are positive signs. Firstly, political, the fact that the election has been brought forward, we hope that will stimulate things a little bit sooner with regards to that certainty in the political sphere, and also with the financial markets as well. I know there's definitely talk of interest rates, going down in the next kind of review. So hopefully we get that political and financial certainty, stability, and then we'll see more change projects, more budget for change projects released, because that's a bit of a stumbling block at the moment. Lots of the projects that we have worked on have been more business as usual cover roles, as opposed to those change and transformation that we really do like to get hold of. The key thing with this one, I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, the IT change transformation, but it is a big part of course, the business world, and is a big part of the change management, change communications roles that we cover. Circa 30% of all change projects have got a real focus on technology, whether that's an S4 HANA, SAP, ERP rollout, these kind of things. So it's really good to get to grips with it if that is something that you're looking to pursue. So as I say, I'll stop here. I'll hand over to our expert, and we'll run a Q&A at the end. So if there's any questions that you've got on the top of your mind, add them into the Q&A, and we can cover those at the end. But as I say, over to you, Erum, and thank you again for joining us today.
Thanks, Matt, and thank you for inviting me. So hi to everyone. Welcome to Tech Change Storytelling, Where to Start. Now, I've been doing comms for various change projects over the last 10 years and 5 years in Agile transformations. I worked in financial services, IT, fintech, and insurance. And I see the same gaps and challenges again and again when it comes to doing comms for tech change, which is why, in fact, I actually set up the Agile Storytelling Company. Now, I believe there's a gap here, and I believe that us comms folks, we can plug this gap, and I'll talk on how we can bridge this disconnect in this session. Now, with that, I'm just going to share my screen. Matt, can you see my screen?
It may just be loading up. I'll have a blue and orange banner across the top that I can see at the moment.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah.
There we go. Cool. All righty. Okay. So to kick off, I want to share some things I often hear people say about tech change. it's a tech thing. It doesn't apply to us. It's not about the business. You might have experienced some of this. I even worked with a program lead who actually said this about comms. And guess what? Their teams, their people didn't give a bleep about their deliverables. Now, there's a lot of negativity around tech change, and this absolutely needs to change. And I believe that we can achieve this. We can do this through comms and storytelling. Now, however, I don't mean the boring functional comms, such as such and such system will no longer be available from 2 p.m. on Wednesday afternoon, or users will be migrated onto system X. That's sort of a bit boring. I mean the human interest stories, the stories that piques people's interest. And in the session, I'm going to share lots of ways to go about getting these stories, and I'll share 3 story ideas that have worked very well for me in the past. Now, before that, pain points. What are the pain points that us communicators are up against? I wonder if any of these might be familiar to you. These are pain points that I've seen in my experience, and I still experience these. First one, a common one, resistance to change. Next one, jargon, a lot to get around, especially if your teams are working in an agile way. This next one, sadly, a lot of change and transformation programs still don't see the value of a good comms approach. They see comms as a load of fluff. They just don't get it. It's a real missed opportunity, in my experience, for getting buy-in, in my opinion. And we'll take a look at this in this session, how we can address this. And if you look over to the right, some challenges working with tech teams, which we'll look at today. Blockers to comms. Now, some leads, in my experience, only want to communicate in good times, but where's the trust in that? And that will just breed speculation and negativity. Sprint releases and schedules. How do your tech teams work? How do you align your comms plans to those release schedules? And we'll take a look at that in this session. Now, if you look to the bottom left, mindset, how do we influence people's mindset? Traditional approach to comms, in my experience, doesn't always work. Culture, a big issue, a big ongoing issue. Now, I will go through most of these, a few up here on the bottom right-hand corner. We don't have time to go through all of these in detail. I will touch on most, but if any of these do resonate with you and you'd like some support, do get in touch. Right. First one, mindset. After all, change does start with mindset. And before we can change anyone else's, first we need to change our own. Now, to adapt your mindset, I'm going to call out the one thing that I recommend you stop doing and the one thing that I recommend you start doing to transform yourself. This is based on my personal experience of working in various change programs. So here's the first thing that I recommend you stop doing. Stop thinking that the change doesn't impact you, or there's a real risk that the project will fail. And the one thing that I recommend you start doing is being flexible and pivoting. Now, tech projects change. The scope, dates, budget, plans, something will very likely change along the way. And this really should be recognized as a norm and not a negative thing. I see and hear people gossiping about the coffee machine or WhatsApp. We need to have the mindset that things will change, dates will slip, things will slip, and pivot ourselves, pivot our plans, and not be negative or despondent, which is something that I see a lot of. And we need to embed this more flexible way of thinking across the board. So that's the first step around mindset. We need to start with ours before we can influence others. Next is the approach to comms. Now, the traditional approach, in my experience, doesn't tend to work in a change or a transformation environment. So I'm going to call out the one thing that I recommend you stop doing and one thing to start doing to transform your approach to comms. So stop just focusing on top-down comms and functional comms. It's not just about the strategic initiatives, and functional tactical comms are just so uninspiring. And instead start telling people stories. It's those human interest stories, and that's what will get people aligned to tech change. and take people on the journey. I'll share some examples a bit later. So you've adapted yourself and your approach. What's next? Working with tech teams. How do you work with tech teams? Now, where do you even start? There's so many roles in tech teams. And then on the business side of change, there's these roles. Now, you can't get to know them all when you're first starting out, but by the time you've got into the groove with the approach that I'm going to go through today, you will know these folks. And more importantly, they will actually get to know you and start to bring story ideas to you. This is what happened to me. So my recommendation is get hold of an org chart. By the way, I'm not suggesting that you have all of these roles in your organization, but find out which ones you do have and get a description of the roles, because these roles can vary from company to company. This really will be very helpful because you'll be very likely interviewing these folks for stories. Now, who do you start with? Now, I recommend making the delivery lead your new BFF. Another leader of change, whatever their title might be in your organization, is the person to connect with and start to build a relationship with. Now, you can also build relationships with the head of change to find about key projects or the sponsor. If you have access to them, they're good for the wider strategic view and to get quotes from them to show that they're behind the change. But the delivery lead, I think, in my opinion, is a pretty good starting point. Now, how do you prepare for a meeting with this lead? Because in my experience, and I learned this along the way, delivery leads are supremely busy people. And that's because they're under a lot of stress, they're under pressure. The delivery of the tech change has a date on it and assigned budget. They'll probably be handling changes such as changing the scope, the plan. Remember, I said things change constantly in a tech environment. And they'll have all manner of stakeholders chasing them. So it's good to be aware of this when working with tech folks. Now, add to the mix. These folks might be the type of person that see comms as a load of fluff. So here's what you do. Now, if it's your first meeting with them, I recommend just put in 10 minutes. You need to start building the relationship and building trust. And they're more likely to accept your invite and actually turn up. And I can tell you, I've had many meetings cancelled because these folks are just supremely busy. And tech change tends to be very complex. So 10 minutes, it works for me every time, and that includes small talk. And I make sure I stick to the 10 minutes. Now, if it's a follow-up meeting, I recommend 15, 20 minutes. And you're starting to build a relationship and they're starting to get a sense of what you do. And again, they're more likely to accept your invite. This is what I do. And have a very clear agenda of what you want, or the outcomes that you want. And I'll come on to that. Now, as you start to work in this way and deliver comms and build a relationship and trust, they will get comms, they will get what you're doing and start to see the value of it. Now, the next thing I recommend is getting to grips with some key jargon. And then using some of their language in your conversations, in your questions, will start to build credibility and trust. Now, talking of jargon, there's lots of it, especially if they're working in an agile way. Take a look at some examples. Now, these are some common terms in tech change, and these are some common terms if they're working in an agile way. Now, I'm not going to go through them here today. It's a short session. I'm just guiding you here to get you started. There is a handout for this. If you like the handout, actually, we can send it out with the link to this after the session. And I promise, but yeah, I'll send it out afterwards. Or you can ping me on LinkedIn or email me, and I promise I won't spam you. Quick flash of the terms. So these are some key terms in the tech space and tech change, and these are some key terms to get you started for conversations if they're working in an agile way. But you'll get this in the handout. Right, so back to our delivery lead, our meeting with the delivery lead. How do you prepare? So you've got 10 to 15 minutes in the diary, and you've got some basic jargon under your belt. Now the meeting itself, so you need to ask the right questions. Now I recommend having a very clear structure of what you need, otherwise you run the risk of coming away with nothing, and this has actually happened to me. So some question examples to start with around the journey. So if it's your first meeting, 10 minutes, talking on what's the vision, what are the goals of the change. And if your change program is already underway, then where are we on this journey to achieving the vision? Then the next set of questions you can ask is around the deliverables. For example, what's the release plan what's on the release plan for the next 3 months? And note there, I'm starting to use some lingo, the release plan. And you can start to build out your plan. So what are the big ticket colleague or customer impacting items? What's happening in the next sprint? Again, a bit of lingo to start building trust. Other questions you can start to ask to tease out some stories are, what are the successes? What are the key milestones? How's BAT testing going, for example? Again, a bit of lingo there. What does go live week look like? So now you've got a bit of a picture of the project and the changes and where things are at. You've got some story ideas. Next thing is you need the actual story. So my recommendation here now is to get some names of who to interview, because the delivery lead is unlikely to know all the detail. So get them to point you in the direction of some folks to interview. And this way, you're actually also starting to build your network of contacts for future stories. Now, repeat this whole approach end to end, and you'll start to educate not just your delivery leads, but also your interviewees on comms and storytelling. And your interviewees, by the way, are those folks that we saw in the role slides earlier. And then these folks will start to come to you with their success stories. And this is what happened to me. It was great. Architects, engineers, scrum masters, who typically don't really like to be the forefront of comms or being interviewed, but actually they got it. They got the value of the comms, and this approach worked really well. Right. So you've got some names of people to interview. How do you interview them? Now, I recommend using this structure in interviews, or you will get lost in jargon. Again, this has happened to me. So some questions to get you started. What's the current state? What happens now? And what's changed? Is it a new tool? Is it a process? Is it something around ways of working? And what does the new state look like? What does the new thing look like? And then you can start asking questions around benefits. Who stands to benefit from these changes? Is it a better customer solution, or is the team getting solutions to customers faster? Or is it benefit to the internal colleagues or stakeholders? Is there an end-to-end process much faster? Is it freeing up time spent doing manual work so they can focus on high-value work, or just streamlining internal processes? And then benefits to the company. Is it cost savings or more operational efficiency? Now, if it's very techy, and I've experienced this, map it out visually as a flow diagram, whatever it takes to get the story. Now, I've actually even asked people to imagine they're talking to their mum because it was so jargon heavy, or their mate in a pub, as I just wasn't getting the story. So be very clear about what you want and keep them on track. And other things to try is to record it, especially if it can be a bit nerve-wracking, if there's a lot of jargon. And at the end, just be upfront, tell them you think you've got everything you need and you may need to get back to them. Now, this approach really helps me. I use this all the time. And all along the way, you're educating tech folks on comms, on the value of comms, how to do comms, and also establishing your ways of working with them on getting content and story ideas. So to recap, you've got 10, 15-minute catch-ups, you've got some key jargon that you'll get that in handout to start meaningful conversations and questions and start to build trust. You've got questions for the delivery lead and questions to interview tech folks, and starting to get ideas for your comms plan. And along the way, you're showing the value of comms to these tech folks, and you're building up your network of contacts for stories and for future success stories. Right. I said at the beginning that I was going to share some stories that have been very successful for me. First one, I worked with a team where back-end automation meant that something that took 15 minutes in the past was now just taking 8 seconds. Now, back-end automation sounds a bit boring, but actually it made a massive difference. It meant the team was delivering solutions to the customer much faster, and the customer was happy, and the team was happy, really happy about this because it meant that they could move on to the next thing. and tech teams tend to like to solutionize and innovate. So there's job satisfaction in there too. And of course, this job satisfaction has an impact on the culture. So this was a win for customers, colleagues, and the company. Now, a bit of a side note here. When I worked on this story, I worked with the tech team and the business, the two teams that are involved in this change, to get both sides of the story. Now, it's well known in some environments that this relationship historically can be a little bit tense. That's because tech teams, business teams, although they have the same goals, they have a very different approach to achieving those goals. So it's important to interview both teams to get both sides of the story, and also just to be aware of this relationship. Next example, resistance to change, and I'm sure you folks must see a lot of this. Now, I worked at a company where the teams would not do their training on a new tool that was being rolled out. They liked the old one, and they were slowing down the whole project. So I interviewed a senior team lead who was an early adopter of the tool, and they talked on the benefits, and published the interview, and the take-up of the training went up immediately. So if you have resistance to change, interview early adopters on how they change their mindset, any challenges they had to overcome to inspire people. Then, third example is psychological safety at work. Now, a few years ago, I bounced an idea with the sponsors of a change program I was working on at the time on doing some stories on failing and learning to promote safety at work. They absolutely loved the idea, so I went and asked a few people to share examples of something had gone wrong and what they learned from it. But it really surprised me because everyone refused. They didn't feel safe. They were worried about losing their jobs. So I played this back to the sponsors, and they were shocked. And one of them actually said, "I've yet to fire anyone who's lost me money from making mistakes." So I interviewed the sponsors, interviewed the sponsors themselves, and got them talking and highlighting the value and the importance of experimenting, innovating, and learning, which, by the way, is very typical in a tech environment, as you might be dealing with something new, something unexplored. So there will be learnings along the way. So sponsors invited people to share their stories, and that made people feel safe and comfortable enough to share. And I actually ended up doing a 3-series piece with colleagues with interviews and videos on something that hadn't gone quite to plan, what they learned from it, and what they would do differently next time. And it landed really well. So there's 3 story ideas that have landed really well for me in the past. You could give that a try. Give those a try. Right. So you'll hear about release plans, release schedules, delivery schedules, and if they're working in an agile way, there'll be a sprint delivery plan. And our sprint is a working cycle that tech teams might be working to. And this could be 2 weeks. I've seen 3 and 4 weeks as well, but usually it's 2 weeks. So I recommend finding out the cadence of your tech team, what release schedule are they working to, and then look to align your comms plan according to that. Now let's take a look at that a bit further. Now, to make this easier to do for myself, during COVID, I developed some artifacts because I wanted to make my life easier for my next role. And then I decided to share it wider, and it's free, it's on the website. One of them is a comms activities plan to make comms planning for tech change much quicker and easier. And it's based on my experience of what people are experiencing, thinking, feeling during a change journey, which I've gathered from working with tech folks myself. I've done a lot of thinking design on this, and it will save you a big ton of time and energy so you can get started quickly. And it's designed to make people on the journey to feel like they're being taken on the change journey and not feel like the change is being done to them, as I often hear. Let's take a look at it. So this is the comms plan template. It's mapped to sprints, i.e. a 2-week cycle. So week 1 on the top and week 2 on the bottom. And each box here shows my day-to-day recommended comms touch points and based on my personal experience. Now, all these activities, they're all assigned a goal, shown by the abbreviations in the brackets. And the key to that is in the bottom left-hand corner. And now that's the functional I inform that's the functional tactical comms, the must-have comms, if you like. For example, do your training or a tool that's being decommissioned. L, this is around learning and knowledge sharing, like lunch and learns or demos of a new tool. And the next two, culture and action, these are the comms that drive actions and behaviors and impact the culture through comms and storytelling, through those human interest stories, some of which we've looked at here today. Now, the examples in the boxes, now these comms touch points, you folks know this stuff, your comms folks, sponsor check-ins, articles, all hands, updates from the leadership team, and so on. And to help get anyone new to this started, I've got some content ideas in the bottom right-hand corner. For example, the need for change, how to navigate change to help people through it. So find out the release pattern of your tech teams and sync your comms plan to that. It will make conversations with delivery leads much easier. And in fact, you could show this template as part of your conversations with them and show them how you can assign goals and themes to comms to drive behaviors, to drive the tech change. And this way, you're continuing to educate them on the value of comms. So back to the plan. You can pare this back or you can ramp it up, whatever works for your team. You can download it, make it your own. It's editable. It's in PowerPoint. Oops, it's free. It's on the website. Yeah, and this will also be in the handout, or we can share the link to the website. I've included another sprint just to show you some more examples of comms touch points, and more, so here I've just added colleague interviews, and then again some content ideas in the bottom right-hand corner to get you started, like doing an inspiring colleague blog, talk about their role, their work, how they've adapted, changed their mindset, how they've adopted the new tech, any challenges they've had to overcome, for example. And I recommend regular updates, keep people up to date on the change, and for example, a newsletter to round things up. Right, so that's the comms template. So conscious I've hit you with a lot here, but I'm hoping that this will get you started if you're new to this, or if you just want some ideas if you're already working in tech change comms. And I want to give you good value for sacrificing your lunch hour on this semi-sunny, semi-cloudy day. Just going back to the pain points that we started with, that we worked through. So resistance to change, we looked at a story idea to handle resistance to change. You can recommend interviewing early adopters. Jargon, there's a handout to set you up for conversations and interviews with tech folks. We've looked at how to gradually show tech folks the value of comms through asking the right questions and using our comms template. Working with tech teams, giving some very practical tools on how to work with tech teams, asking the right questions and structures. So giving you some question ideas and structures on how to interview them. And I've shown you how to use our comms template to plan and align to a release schedule. We touched on the sensitive relationship between tech and business teams, and we looked at mindset, start with yours, changing the traditional comms approach to make it work better in the tech environment. And so all in all, you've got my tried and tested recommendations here to get you started, to do interviews, put this into practice, land your comms, and mindset change and culture change will follow. And if you do put this into practice, do let me know how you get on. I'm always very interested to hear. Right, I will start to conclude. So it's pretty well known that many transformations fail. Now, there's two reasons for this, one being leadership team mindset, and the other being a lack of alignment of people to the change. Now, I believe that we can do something about one of those. I believe there's a key role here for us to play here to bridge this gap. I started the session talking about bridging the disconnect when it comes to tech change. And I believe that we can do this through comms and storytelling. So embrace tech change, adapt yourself, and let's leverage this underutilized mechanism to drive buy-in and mitigate negativity and change this negative narrative. Now, whether you're starting out on the change journey or already on it, I recommend being curious about the change in your organization. And for any management here today, join the strategic conversations, lobby for budget for comms resource, educate your stakeholders of the virtues of good comms to drive change, and dial up comms. And if you want to learn more about tech change storytelling, I am doing a one-day course with the IOIC on the 3rd of July. I think there's still places available. Take a look at their website. Or if you want upskill in Agile and Agile comms planning, I'm running the Leading Agile comms course on the 5th of November. Again, check the website for the dates and to sign up. So that is it. Phew, really. Before we go to questions, what I wanted to add is if you'd like a session like this one, but tailored to your organization or to your team, please do get in touch. If you need support or help with any tech change or agile transformation comms, we do training, mentoring, and consultancy work. I post on LinkedIn on this space, so do feel connect on or follow me on LinkedIn. I'd be very happy to connect with you. And yeah, all that remains for me to say. So thank you to Matt. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks to Genevieve. And happy to take some questions.
Brilliant. Thank you, Erum. Really great comprehensive presentation there, some brilliant tips. And I'm sure the attendees would have got a lot from it. It's a shame we can't see everybody. I'm sure people would have wanted to say thank you or, in some capacity, but yeah, really brilliant presentation and bringing something which, again, that technology can sometimes be a little bit dry, but bringing it to life and showing how you can make it as engaging as possible. So thank you for that. So I've got some questions that I'll run through with Erum now. Anything on your mind, just add it into the Q&A and we can run through that. We've got plenty of time. So firstly, with regards to the jargon, I think maybe you went on a few of the jargon slides quite quickly. Someone asked what the BAT stands for.
BAT is I was conscious I didn't want to hit people with too much. It was just to get people started to get people going, but we'll send the handout. So BAT testing is business acceptance testing, and very simply, it just means making sure that the impacted teams are ready for the new tech. And so typically you'll have some colleagues doing some testing in parallel to make sure that the systems, the new tool, apps, processes, whatever it may be, that it works and it works in the way that it needs to before go live. A very important part of the process to get this. And then bugs and issues will come out of that then they'll feed that back to the tech teams, and they'll resolve those issues, and then they'll test the tool, the thing again.
Brilliant. Thank you. That helps. Spot on. So whoever anonymous that question, but I think that was
good question.
The term and the description. So Nicola asks, I'm really interested in learning more about what and how you measure the success of your communication activities. So I guess it could differ depending on the what you're looking at there, but I don't know if you've got an example that you can with regards to measuring success.
Good question. There's all the usual comms mechanisms, surveys and polls, that kind of thing. One of the things that I like to see is stakeholder engagement, because this is change, tech change, and with tech change comes resistance. So one of the things that I like to see is, are more people engaging? And that there's probably not an official metric as far as I'm aware, but probably conversations. What are you hearing on the ground? Talk to the tech teams, talk to the business teams. Are they engaging? If you're familiar with business readiness teams, their roles are to make sure that the impacted teams are ready for go live. So do they have access to the new tool? Do they have training to the new tool? And these folks will have access to the business. They've got their ear to the ground. So you could speak to them and find out, what are people hearing? What are people feeling? Are they engaging with the new tech or the idea of a new tech? So inner side, to answer the question, inner side, as well as the usual surveys and polls, stakeholder engagement activity, I think, is a really key one, because there's always resistors.
Definitely, and that's a good point, because you mentioned in a presentation around the bringing in the early adopter. You brought in an early adopter to demonstrate how it's impacted them in order to combat those resistors, and then you're able to see the more people being engaged or logging in with the learning tutorials.
Yeah.
So then you can kind of see the direct impact of that, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, look to see how many people are doing the training, and if you're putting any content out there, look to see if people are engaging with that content, whether it's on SharePoint, on intranet sites. But training is another good one to see if people are engaging with that or not.
Real. So Alex asks, do you have any tips on bringing sponsors, delivery leads on board with a storytelling approach such as this, rather than a traditional static updates, which are potentially viewed as safer or simpler means of communicating?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. Now, some sponsors are really up for communicating and doing stand-ups and taking questions from folks, and others less so, which is one of the pain points I talked about. Some leads only like to talk about things when things are, give updates when things are good, but in a tech change, that's not always the case. So let's go with the worst case scenario. Let's go with working with a senior leader who's not comfortable about talking on comms, and I've giving updates on change. Now I've experienced this, and arm yourself with lots of patience, and also prepare the talking points for them. Show them that it doesn't, you can prepare really difficult questions in advance and go through it. I've done this myself numerous times. And not everyone likes being on the spotlight, so anticipate, what's the worst case scenario if there's, date slippages, budget slippages, resource issues. What are the worst questions that they could be asked? Prep the answers, and then work with the sponsor or the senior leaders through those answers to give them comfort on handling those difficult questions, talking points, and help develop talking points, and get some user feedback, some quotes from users give on the ground, get some of those wins and success stories to give a balanced update. Videos is another good way, although not quite live, but another option, and it just a bit mixes up the channel, the mechanism, rather than just emails or articles.
Real.
Did that help? Did that help?
Shame you can't have the Alex. There we go. Alex said yeah, it did. So thank you, Alex, for that. And so Beverly asks, regarding sharing lessons in engineering projects, project managers collate a risk register where they have to share all of these issues. Do IT change projects have this resource as well?
So I think that sounds like, if I understood the question correctly, lessons learned, it sounds like. And do IT, just wondering is this something that you as a comms team are looking to get a hold of and share the learnings? Be good to understand, get a bit more flavor around that question.
Okay, Beverly, if you've got a follow-up that you could add into the Q&A,
What
or
are you looking to do? If it's to cascade and share the learnings in the spirit of continuous learning and development, great idea. But yeah, it'd be good to get a bit more color on that question.
well, we can come back to that as well. And just so everybody's aware, I'm going just because we've got some questions coming through in the Q&A and as well as the chat. So I'm just going through the Q&A ones at the moment, and then onto the chat. So if I haven't asked your question, that's why. So anonymous, please ask, how do you avoid comms becoming a post box for the tech team? I have experience of this being their expectation of the role, whereas I had to focus on the impact of change to the global organization. It can become a battleground of expectation setting. So what I guess wanting it to be a bit more strategic rather than just that kind of delivery post box function, I guess selling the benefits of what you can do. But anyway, over to you, sorry.
I think simplify the message, what's in it for them, and also, one size doesn't fit all. And a lot of organizations send blanket emails. That doesn't always work. And tech teams, in my experience, tend to use Slack. So I think make the message smaller, make it streamlined. Why should they care about it? Another thing that I used to do is work with tech teams in small groups, or get into their meeting agendas. Now, tech teams don't like folks attending their team meetings, but what you could do is talk to the scrum master or the lead of those tech teams and find out with them what's the best way to get the key messages to them. So find the best way that they like to engage and absorb information. I worked with a team where they never opened their laptops, which is where emails went. They were always on their Macs. So find the best way that they engage with information, because it really will vary with teams and people. So mix it up.
And you mentioned there, a question from me actually, Erum, that tech teams, IT teams, they don't like comms people joining their meetings. Is it what is that? Surely you're there to help them. I don't understand. Is it always a constant battle, or are some of them a little bit more embracing of, what you can do?
I've yet to see a tech team that's happy for someone to drop into their meetings, and I think, I guess if they're working in an agile way, for example, then a daily stand-up, for example, or a scrum or a Kanban, it's very structured. It's not it's not kind of a free flow update. It has a very fixed format. So, for example, daily stand-up will be what I did yesterday, what I'm doing today, and any risks or blockers to what I'm working on right now. So if someone comes into that, it kind of interrupts that flow. So I think whatever the reason may be, I think we've just got to respect that. And I think if we spoke to, again, we've got to, us comms folks, we've got to cater for all personalities, all different ilks. So I think the best way is to speak to the team lead or the scrum master if they're working in that setup, and find out how to get the message across. The scrum master is a great person to also to stay in contact with, to stay close with, if you want to get information out. In, I think there was the earlier question, if you want to get content or information or news out to tech teams, the scrum master is a great person to channel that through, and they will know the best mechanism for their teams. Good
Okay.
question.
Thank you. I just jumped in there. Sorry, I've got a list, but as you mentioned it, I kind of thought. So Katie asks, are newsletters really effective? Do you have examples of more engaging pieces of comms or channels which support providing awareness and encouraging engagement that's more immediate?
I think email, news article on the homepage, newsletters, those kind of things. I know historically this is what we've done, but at the end of the day, I think you can't get away from some of those traditional mechanisms. But again, I think it's good to find different ways to engage. So I try to mix it up. I'll organize a quick town hall with people, or a quick Teams call or video content, just to keep things fluid, just to mix it up. I'm trying to think of other examples that I've done. Video blogs or articles, interviews as a blog, Q&As, just so the format and the information and the style is varied, just to kind of break the pattern of that. But videos are great if you've got the ability to do that in-house. That's a pretty good, quick and easy way to share content, and that people tend to engage with.
So kind of multi-channel approach rather than, relying on one. Yeah, okay.
Multi-channel
Okay.
for sure.
Good. I appreciate putting you on the spot a lot here, and with lots of different kind of things. So, I think there's really good answers come through. So, Emily asks here, she mentioned often tech change can be a very long journey. How do you sustain engagement with the change, especially with the rest of the business that feels less impacted? I find that too much engagement can be a killer. Striking the right balance is tricky.
Good question. So I like to have two strands of comms, if you like, one with the impacted teams, and then the rest of the business just ad hoc comms on the channels that they engage with, so that they know, because what happens, tech change can be something going on in the background that the wider business doesn't know about, and ultimately it may end up impacting them, or they may be onboarded onto that tech change at some point. So with the impacted teams, I think, again, mix it up, different channels, multi-channel approach that we just talked about. And I think it's really, really important for senior leaders to get in there and give updates on the progress being made, celebrate the milestones, celebrate the wins. And if it's not going so well, just to be upfront and transparent. I think some leaders tend to hide from giving updates, especially if things aren't going to plan, or they just haven't prioritized comms. I've seen work with leads who are so focused on delivering the thing. In fact, one of the statements early in the session today is they haven't given comms enough priority, but it's really important for those senior leaders to keep people updated, and and for the sponsor to check in with people just to keep people energized and motivated, and give recognition. Ultimately, who doesn't like a bit recognition? And change programs are hard. It's a really, they're hard. The timelines are tough, so it's really important to keep people energized through recognition and updates. And then with the keep close contact, keep close updates with the impacted teams and the tech teams, and then with the wider business, I think it's good to have a cadence of comms just to let them know that there's some big change happening in the background here, and this is how it's going to impact our business and our ways of working, etc., etc. And if it's a phased rollout, then it starts to prime people that are going to get onboarded onto the new tool, the new change, whatever that may be.
Well, thank you, Erum. A question here from Abigail, just with regards to time frame. She said, thank you for sharing your knowledge and tools so generously. We've had lots of thank you messages come through, so I'll reiterate that. When is the best time to announce that tech change is coming? As you clearly explained, the IT schedules are usually agile and dates often move around. When the change feels like it never materializes, often makes the comms feel stale. The audience loses interest and trust can be undermined as it feels like promises are broken. So yeah, quite a lot to digest there, but around timeframes as well.
Yeah, so timeframes. So I think it's that mindset piece that I talked about, and people get despondent when things slip and plans change, but that is just the very nature of change. So I think it's just transparency and honesty, and especially from senior leaders, I think we should encourage our senior leaders to be honest and transparent that things will change, things will slip. And I think it's good to communicate that a change is happening, because word gets out, people start speculating, and I've seen this myself. People start to get very upset, people start to get stressed about their jobs, and when you start talking about operating in a more efficient way and being more lean and cost savings, all these things, which are actually, you could put a positive spin on it. If the company is operating more efficiently, it could be more opportunities, different roles, different opportunities for people in the organization. So I think it's really important to announce why the change is happening and when and how. And if things change, really important to keep people up to date, because it just breeds uncertainty and negativity and speculation, which really it just contributes towards a toxic environment. And this happens a lot, unfortunately. So I think this is why, again, I think us as comms folks, we need to change that. I think we can, using comms and storytelling, I think just remind people of the end vision, the end goal, what good looks like, and reiterate that change journey is hard. It will be hard, but at the end of it, these are the milestones that we're gunning for and that we're aiming for, and this is what good will look and feel like.
Well, thank you. Emily asks, have you experienced a change program where the delivery lead could not be engaged with at all? Maybe back to your expletive earlier, I don't know. But yeah, tell us a little bit more about that.
I've had a few of those, and this is really difficult, and this is probably why you saw the 70% stat from McKinsey's transformations fail, and leadership teams are a massive challenge, and that's very widely known. The big consultants are talking about this all the time. I think if we can solve that problem, then we've solved a pretty big problem. But I think legacy mindset and legacy management style is a really difficult one to resolve. And how to get them on board, I think, again, I think touched on this earlier, is show them, which is why I actually said about putting 10 minutes in. If you put in 30 minutes, you're going to very likely get a decline from those sorts of leads. So I think it's a slow burner. I think be patient, stick with it. Use some of the mechanisms that I've talked through today, build a relationship. If you can, grab coffee with them in person and keep it to 5-10 minutes, just to say hi, hello, introduce yourself, and build on that. This is a difficult one, and I'm continually working on that. But again, use the approach that I've talked through in this session to build that relationship. not an easy one.
Perfect. I think we nearly finished on the questions. I thought there was a lot of going on in the chat, but it is kind of chat and advice and things. So that makes it a little bit easier. Beverly has followed up from our question earlier. It may be best to pick up with Beverly separately. Maybe you can
Yep, okay.
connect
Do
as
that,
well.
yeah.
Just kind of recap on that one. Tracy has asked another question about timings. It's kind of maybe follow on from the question we had earlier, but when do you think is the best time to bring in comms? Too early is treading water, too late, and it's firefighting, acting as a last minute post box. I don't know if that question came through after you mentioned a bit about timeframes, or if there's anything else you can add
I
to
think
that.
we had that. I think, yeah, I'll just reiterate. I think just as soon as the transformation change is agreed, I think it's good to let people know. And working out the cadence, look at the cadence of the activity, what's on that release map, what are the key milestones, when will it start to impact people? There could be a lot of tech change going in the background. If it's a big team, is it a small team? I think look at, once you've built the relationship with the delivery lead, is look to see what the cadence of change is that will impact colleagues is, and then work, build out your comms plan accordingly.
Perfect. Thank you. There's a question Tamara has asked just with regards to CV. Tamara, I can pick up with you separately on that as well, just recommendations on how to tailor. Or should I do it to the panel? To everybody else? I don't know. Okay, maybe I could answer that. Do you have any recommendations on how to tailor your CV to tech roles? I go for tech change comms roles, but don't get an interview. I've worked with tech teams, but not directly doing the change comms. So it's a difficult one. I always advise to try and get as much exposure to tech and technology and IT transformation as possible, even if you're not the direct comms lead. It's like chicken and egg. How do I become the change comms lead in this tech program if someone isn't going to give me the opportunity? So it's just trying to get exposure to it as much as possible. I think lots of the times when you are applying for roles, I mentioned this on a previous webinar. This doesn't necessarily relate to recruiters so much, but lots of companies will have systems that will scan through CVs and things, and they'll look for keywords and things like that. So you could always, if you add in, if you're applying for a role which is launching an SAP, there's an SAP rollout, and you haven't got SAP on your CV, and you apply for a big global corporate, then it will probably just scan through, and they have 100, 200 applications, and they'll just, shortlist the people that have worked on similar programs. So I would probably advise, definitely tailoring your CV depending on the technology change that you're applying for, and adding in some that you've worked on in some capacity in that area. I mean, I wouldn't advise to lie for sure. If you haven't worked on an SAP, I probably wouldn't add it in there, but I would just try and align where you can your experience to that where possible. I hope that helps. But we can definitely pick up tomorrow. I'd be more than happy to have a call, or we can have a meeting and run through your CV and see where we can edit that and improve your chances of getting that application, that interview. Sorry. Lots of thank yous coming through. There was one more question. I know we're nearly at half one now, so we could run over. Caroline, I thought this was a good question actually. How do you draw a balance between telling the truth of the change versus sugarcoating it, as it involves, as it could potentially involve job losses, um, as it involves job losses and work? So we'll be on our back. Okay, so yeah, basically with regards to telling the truth and sugarcoating, how do you find that balance?
Oh, that's a great question. Great question. And I'm up against this all the time. I think, yeah, and of course, senior leads won't want to go all out with the detail if things aren't going so well. I think it's striking that balance at the risk of sounding like kind of sitting on the fence. It's going back to, or playing it safe, it's going back to the vision, the goal, what is the end goal? What does good look like? I sometimes liken change program like moving house, moving from house A to house B. You're going to get a bigger room, be closer to your school, closer to work, but there's going to be some pain along the way. You're going to have to pack and you're going to unpack. It's going to hurt. So I think it's that honesty. Job losses is a bit of a sensitive one, and I would normally work with an HR team on that. And I would recommend the same, because then it gets into quite sensitive areas. But again, constantly reminding people of the vision and the goal, the end goal, what good looks like, because that's the thing that's going to keep people energized and motivated. And then sharing their success stories and how and the colleague stories, how people are adapting their mindset, adapting to the change themselves. And those stories, those human interest stories, really do pique people's interest and really do engage, and they're pretty successful in my experience.
Real. I don't think sitting on the fence, it's good advice there with regards to working closely with HR. Brilliant. Well, like I say, we've overrun as it is 10 minutes. Massive thank you again to Erum, and thank you for everyone for joining today. Keep an eye out, stay tuned. We're hosting another one in July. We're going to take a break in August for holidays, and then back on it again in September. So stay tuned for the July session. And again, if you ever would like some extra support with the technology transformation, then Erum would be more than happy to help. She's a coach for the IOIC as well. And in the unlikely event that you would like some recruitment support, we're here to help there as well. But no, thank you again for joining. Thank you, Erum, and
Thanks,
wishing you
Matt.
guys all the best.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.